In today's video, we're going to be diving in to the upcoming pattern, taking a look at an extremely interesting pattern. In my opinion, it is going to be a revolving door pattern is kind of what I call it, where we're going to see warm-ups, cooldowns, and then warm-ups and then cooldowns, and it's going to happen pretty rapidly. Typically, this leads to more storminess, and you might not believe me, but it does oftentimes lead to more snowfall than a purely cold pattern. As you guys have probably learned over the past 3 or so weeks, extreme cold sometimes actually is a little bit disruptive for snowfall. So we might see more opportunities at that. More severe weather in general is what I would typically expect. And there might be some nicer, warmer days in there, which after all the cold we've had, I'm sure a lot of us would enjoy a little bit of that to be able to get outdoors and just see the sun and feel a little bit of warmth. I mean, my goodness, it has been so cold. Overall, I expect a more active pattern in general. So let's just take a look at it. We're looking at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. We can see that there is areas of warmth like the Midwest and Plains, areas of cold like the Northeast in general, as well as some of the Mid-Atlantic, the Southwest in general as well. Warmer in the Southeast, colder in the Northwest. So it is all over the place here. And when we look at the precipitation, we see that, as I mentioned just a moment ago, it actually just leads to above average precipitation for most of the eastern and central states. Really, it's the southwest corridor through into the northern plains where we really see a lack of activity. Even the northwest seeing more activity during this 28th through February 1st time frame. Let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, which does look a little bit warmer even in the east here. This will be for the 30th of January through the 5th of February. Still a little bit of cold in the very far northeast, like New England, holding on, and also the northwest, but a overall warmer regime looks to set up for the very early portion of February. Precipitation on the upswing. Again, this kind of back and forth temperature pattern. I don't expect purely warm or cold. Obviously, the Climate Prediction Center, as we've seen, calling for more warmth than cold, but I don't think it's purely one or the other here, as we're going to see on the model guidance. And this leads to low pressure systems being able to ride in with those jet streams, those cold fronts, all sorts of activity that we've really been missing out on for the most part over the last, I would say, 3 weeks. So we're going to see some big changes here coming up very, very soon. Let's take a look here at the past 20 days, and this is continuously cooling. We now see a very solid area that is looking like we've had about 10 to 15 degrees below normal over the past 20 days, which is on the very far extreme end of things. Now let's go ahead and move on, talk about the model guidance. And as we're looking at today, it's very cold still. Again, we're not reaching that pattern of revolving door pattern and for a little bit here. And there's not a lot of storminess to go around. Maybe some snow showers for the Great Lakes, extending into the Ohio Valley a little bit, but not too much to discuss, at least for today. As we move towards Friday, a lot of the same, very cold, very inactive. Saturday, very, very similar, so a little bit quieter here for the moment. Again, extreme cold, extremely quiet has been the trend for the past 3 weeks. We do start to see some storms flaring up throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, maybe parts of Arkansas by Sunday here on the 26th, just 3 days from now. Also a nice storm system here with some cooler weather for the southwest, which could really help with those wildfires out there in Southern California. Also for some snowpack in the Sierra Nevada mountains, where they have almost assuredly seen a below average amount of snowfall this season. First off, it's a La Nina. Second off, it's just been purely warm and dry over the west, so they really could use all the snow they could get out there. I know it's detrimental for not only the water throughout the state of California, but not only that, it really is good for the economy there, for the mountains with the skiing and everything. So very good news for them. As we move this towards Monday, we do see that the storminess sticks around a little bit here for the southwest. Also, kind of the Gulf states seeing some showers, maybe some lighter isolated thunderstorms. We do see some snowfall here close to the Great Lakes as we have a couple of stronger lows here moving across eastern Canada. And overall, I mean, the warmth is starting to make its push in a little bit here through the east. So by Monday, we're starting to see a warming trend. I would still say that we're probably closer to average, if anything, for these areas, maybe even still a little bit below average, but moving a lot warmer than we are as I'm speaking right now on Thursday, January 23rd. As we move towards Tuesday on the 28th, we see that this cool air kind of rebounds a little bit with a Cold front that wants to move down behind a 984 low pressure center right there between Maine and Canada. So a little backdoor cold front here stretching behind it. This could bring about some snow showers and cooler air. Like I mentioned, it is going to be a roller coaster. We saw the warm up finally move in and then boom, instantly a cool down. And I expect a lot of that to occur here. As we move towards Wednesday, things are warming a little bit. We do have a clipper system moving through the Great Lakes here, moving into the Mid-Atlantic and perhaps Northeast. Those are typically light to moderate snow events at best. Also, by this Wednesday date, we do have a low trying to form over Texas, bringing some rainfall, maybe even thunderstorms for Oklahoma and Texas. Snowfall here for the Four Corner States, a little bit of an interesting storm down there. Still, we haven't seen anything too major, but as we take it towards Thursday, we see that this storm becomes a lot more interesting. It's going to bring about a warm push for the east as well. This low is trying to form in here. Clearly, we could tell there's a warm front trying to get going, as well as a cold front dragging underneath of this. We do have some snowfall back here behind it for Nebraska, Colorado, New Mexico, maybe even a little bit of Kansas there. Really, we would be mainly watching for thunderstorms in this corridor here if this occurred this way for Thursday on the 30th. We also see a pretty massive storm system here for the Northwest coming in, which we do expect a lot more of. So very interesting. Also some much needed snowfall for the Cascade Mountains. As we take this towards Friday, we see this storm gets very, very interesting. Low here, cold front underneath kind of stretching, and a warm front pretty close to that cold front. And this creates a warm kind of sector of this storm up the southeast coast. This is going to be a big warm up for these areas behind that warm front. And a lot of thunderstorm activity for states like Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. This could be a major thunderstorm event or even severe weather event if this verifies. And we've seen the models pushing for a low moving almost directly northward from the south central state region, northward up into like the Midwest or Ohio Valley. We've seen this for multiple runs in a row. I'm pretty confident there will be a storm. Location might vary a little bit, but regardless, it would carry some severe weather threats with it, which is really, really impactful. Also, snowfall for the plains and Midwest. You can move this east or west, north or south, but we've seen a similar output, just different locations here for a couple of days, like I mentioned. For Saturday, we see that this becomes kind of a cutoff cold front. We do see some thunderstorms here, especially for Tennessee, North Carolina southward along this storm boundary. It looks pretty intense here for these deeper south states, and perhaps some ice or snowfall threats here for the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic here by Saturday, the 1st of February. We see that low, a secondary low forms here along that cold front, which happens very, very often. It tries to move up into the Mid-Atlantic. We end up getting another really resurgence of these thunderstorms up the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and then heavy showers here for the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast with some wintry weather perhaps for Maine, but we are in the warm sector of the storm. But this is a cold front, and we do see the cold air moving in behind it. So again, roller coaster of a pattern. Cold air is trying to move back in. Warmth is trying to regain its foothold out here in the west, although we do have just tons of snow and cold here for the Cascades, Northern Rockies. This would be a massively beneficial storm for them, to say the least. Again, early February timeframe. That all moves through. We end up with a smaller cool down in the east, but we get a low forming really over the Midwest that begins to bring another warm sector to the east. So revolving door, we're moving right back into the warmth. The cold is diving in behind this low, which is standard. We get some wintry weather up there in the Midwest because of this. And I don't see quite as much of a severe weather threat on this current imagery we're seeing from the model. But if we saw a similar storm to this, it could look quite a bit different with that severe weather threat. We really end up with some snowfall for the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and that does extend into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic there before it brings in colder air again for the 5th, 6th, 7th. And then we really end up with a pattern that is largely all over the place with tons of storms riding along this northern jet, which is basically moving through here. So we see snowfall, rainfall, a mixed bag of precipitation moving along that jet. Very, very active, though, to end things off for the very early portion of February, probably that first week time frame. Crazy stuff. When we look at the GFS, we're going to see some similar things. We see very cold, very dry, although this is kind of interesting. We saw this storm on the European model as well, and I've been watching it for a couple of days. here across the deeper south for the 27th time frame. I think we might have even talked about this days ago, but we didn't see snowfall on the European model. But on the GFS, it's starting to flirt with some snowfall between kind of Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, some mountainous, hilly areas. There's enough cold right up here for snowfall. It's just the storm kind of is just too far south. But if we see a little bit more interaction here, all of a sudden you could be looking at some sort of Ohio Valley mid-Atlantic threat. We're still about 100 hours away, or approximately 4 days, something like that. So there is enough time for some trends to happen, and I want you guys to pay attention to that date because there is a small probability that we could see something occur there. Both models really have, for the most part, a nothing burger, though. We do end up with this clipper through the Great Lakes as well for the 28th into the Great Lakes, and then for the 29th into the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Pretty interesting there. And then we end up with this deeper south activity. We get really active thunderstorms throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, even the kind of Gulf states there into the southeast. This model splits it up a lot more. We still end up with wintry weather for February 1st here in the northern plains and upper Midwest. Thunderstorms throughout the southeast corridor here. A huge blast of warmth through the southeast, really a southeast ridge here trying to set up. Pretty similar to the European model. Active thunderstorms for days. And then we end up with this really, really active northern jet. We end up seeing a storm move across the plains here into the Midwest, Ohio Valley. Even the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast end up with some snowfall from that. And then we see a more northern storm for the 6th here for the upper Midwest, northern plains, Great Lakes, and Northeast there. And we might even be getting going with another system trying to move through, bringing some snowfall to these northern areas again just after that. So again, activity when you follow the jet stream, we're seeing just storms along it the whole way through, and it really starts after February 1st on almost all of these models. So I do expect a huge surge of activity here according to the model guidance. When we look at the total precipitation, looking decent for the east. It'll be above average in some spots, and it's looking quite decent for the northwest as well. When we look at the anomalies, it pretty much shows that, again, a lot more above average precipitation than we've seen in days past. When we look at the total snowfall here on the European model, the mountainous west does phenomenal. Really a huge comeback from what we've really been seeing, which is a lack of snowfall. And then again, like we talked about yesterday, these more northern areas, the classic areas to see snowfall throughout winter, start to cash in a lot more here as we move, especially into the very late portion of January and then early February. We just got to wait a few days here and we'll start moving into that more north-based pattern. So I think that you guys might be cashing in here soon. I know it's weird seeing New Orleans and the panhandle of Florida get more snowfall than you guys, but that could change really quickly here if this model guidance is correct. When we zoom in the east, we see a foot to 2 feet for a lot of these northern areas. We should get a pretty healthy snowpack going here fairly soon. GFS model agrees it's not quite to the same degree that we saw in the European model, but there is plenty of snowfall up here, so still that's where the threats will remain. And equally so as the European model, we see just tons of mountainous west snowfall here. When we look at the zoomed in look, about the same thing. Your temperature pattern here, we'll really see this largely cold pattern until we get our first little mild push, which is going to be around the 26th Sunday. And we end up with a near normal pattern here. We're seeing temperatures within 5 degrees of normal, so mostly below, but still it's very, very close. We're going to warm up even further here as we move towards like Tuesday the 28th. A lot of oranges and reds in there. That's going to be warm. Again, very suddenly we get a backdoor cold front that cools things right back down for Wednesday. Thursday, a little colder. But then by the weekend, we see a huge warm push up the eastern states for early February. And then another very large cold push here for the 5th, 6th, 7th. And then another warm up perhaps. So you can tell where I get the name revolving door from. We're really going warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold over and over and over again. GFS model, we're going to see agreement very, very cold. Milder push here for Sunday. We warm up even further as we reach kind of the early to midweek, but then we get, again, a backdoor cold front that's pretty intense for the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic here, Great Lakes, even down the Southeast. We do warm up after, though, for the early February timeframe. And it looks like we get a lot less of a cool down in the east here on this GFS model. So we kind of just stay warm for the early February timeframe. Obviously, we'll find out which one is correct out of these two. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.